Hello and welcome back to the Authentic Creative, expanding our capacity to feel good. I'm really thrilled because today we have an incredible guest. It is such an honor. Erin Rachel Doppelt is a spiritual psychology and meditation teacher with her master's in psychology and education with a spirituality mind body focus from Columbia University Teachers College. Columbia. Slow down. University Teachers College. Talking to myself here. She spent her 20s living in Israel, India, and across Asia and Europe, studying with diverse gurus and yogic educators. I want to get into that a little bit. Erin is the CEO and founder of the international brand Spiritual Intelligence, which hosts certification trainings and business and spiritual courses to support those looking to live their most unedited, nourished, and soul authentic life. Erin is the creator of UpLevel Meditation, an active meditation framework supporting those in healing anxiety, depression, and ADD, ADHD, and shifting negative thoughts toward the light. She is also the founder of the Align Coaching Certification, where you become a certified meditation teacher and spiritual psychology coach. Erin's frameworks have been featured by South by Southwest, NBC, Google, Healthline, and Nike. She is also the host of the Wise Woman podcast, your place to get insights on Erin's life, exciting guests, and spirituality and psychology tools to deepen your connection to self and your highest possible timeline. She is from Chicago and enjoys traveling the world with her husband, John, reading in cafes, drinking strong coffee, and eating ethnic food. You guys can connect with her on Instagram and TikTok at Erin Doppelt or on her website, and you can buy her book, Nothing Can Stop You. So excited to have you here. I know you were just nursing your daughter to sleep, and it is such a precious time for you to be in motherhood, to be at these precious stages. And I'm just really honored that you would take time from the mothering cycles to be here and chat. Thank you.
Oh my God, it's the greatest joy of my life. I'm so happy to be here with you. We both had wild mornings this morning, but I think it's nice that we can convene and drop in and share a little bit of truth, a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of authenticity. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I feel like you're bringing me to the new, there's like authentic and then there's like Erin. I feel like you're like even more authentic than my authentic. When I hear you and your voice and the way you speak and listening to your audiobook, I'm like, oh, that's another level of authenticity right there. And it just drops me deeper into my truth. So thank you for that.
Thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, I have so much I want to talk to you about. Okay, so let's just start with living and learning across so many cultures must have been incredibly transformative for you. So was there a moment, Erin, or a practice from your time abroad that like completely, I'm sure many moments that completely shifted your perspective on spirituality and on life, but was there like one kind of formative moment of knowing for you?
People come to me all the time during crossroads in their lives, and it's usually something along the lines of, should I go get my master's or my PhD? Or is there something else that I could recommend? And I always say, book the plane ticket, go travel. Go travel. Every new country you go to is a new PhD. Get lost in another world, remove yourself from your everyday rituals, and see who you find there. Travel is a pathway to peace. You don't need to be rich to do this, right? We live during a time where you can find really affordable airline tickets to other places in the world. You could go to a country that is much more cost effective for you to live in. Go meet people opposite your own conflict. Go connect with somebody that speaks a different language and prays to a different God than you. Eat different food. Food for me is highly important, a big love language. So There is a spiritual proverb. John Kabat-Zinn talks about this as well. Wherever you go, there you are. So I want you to hold the duality. So if you are somebody that is anxious day in and day out, or struggling to heal something day in and day out in your normal life, going to a foreign country, that's not going to necessarily solve it. It could support you, right? If you are living in a chaotic city and you go to the jungle, that's going to relax your nervous system. But wherever you go, there you are. So you still need to do the deep work, even if you are on the other side of the world. You still need to take time to account for the soul and check in with thyself and be kind to you deeply and completely, and do it anyways.
I love that so much because I think that we, especially as Americans, don't travel enough. My husband's British, and because he's British, I've gotten to go to London quite a bit. And even though we share a similar language, it's so different. And whenever I've visited, I feel like I've gone deeper into understanding myself and getting that perspective of, oh my gosh, like not everyone does things the same way, even if we share a similar language. And I know for my parents, they haven't traveled as much as they wished that they had. And now they're getting to a place where it's really harder for them. And it kind of breaks my heart that they didn't give themselves that opportunity. Also, I love the fact that you're just leveling the playing field. You're like, I went to this Ivy League school, but I got so much more out of my travels. I'm really curious about the ashram. So were you in one or two or several ashrams? Was it, what kind of
Yeah,
ashram was it?
I've lived in a lot of ashrams. An ashram is
Okay.
a spiritual sacred center. An ashram is a place typically in Hindu and Buddhist culture where you go to pray. And it just so happens that in Hinduism, prostration, which is how you bow and contort your body, that's yoga. So a segment of Hinduism is yoga asana, which is the postures that we know in yoga, specifically in a hatha yoga sequence, hatha. So when I was living in Israel, there is an ashram called Shatim Bimidbar, the ashram in the desert. It's like, you can think of it as Zion, like you can think of it as the place where miracles happen in the desert, in the Bible and the Torah. So there's this incredible ashram out there that I studied in. I write about this in my book as well. But then when I moved to India, I lived in a lot. The one in Israel is a segment of Osho, an Osho ashram. Osho is a great yogic educator and more of an active meditation sequence. When I was in India, I also spent time in different lineages, ashrams and Osho ashrams, and a little bit Bikram, but there was my whole point in bringing this up is there's a lot of great yogic educators, and it has come out that a lot of them weren't that great to women and they
I
weren't
know.
really great to humanity. However, their practices were
Yeah.
quite sacred. So I think it's very important to remove the guru from their practices and not always worship a guru, to worship at your own feet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I lived in a lot of different ashrams, spent a lot of good amount of time in silence. Don't recommend it for women that find God via voice and connection. I do think it can be quite powerful for men. And that really served me in that period of time. And it's just something I'm not really interested in right now, right? So that's
Yeah.
not, it served its purpose. And
Yeah.
now let's do something else.
It's fascinating. My parents were in a Sikh yoga ashram in Boston, Massachusetts, just, well, in Dorchester specifically, for almost a decade. They were American Sikhs. Like they wore all white, they wore the turbans. They got up in the middle of the night, practically took cold showers, had a very, very, very strict practice, and eventually got sick. This was a Yogi Bhajan ashram. And that's why I'm named Siri, is because the one of the yogis named me. And we left when I was almost about 3. And whenever my mom and my dad, who are now divorced, get together, they reminisce about the ashram and they talk about all the different people and their names and and it's really fascinating to listen to. So It's so interesting because that definitely could have been my path for,
Absolutely.
and they would have sent me to India and I would have had probably one of the experiences that some of the women had, which was not great. And now they're all having to testify and it's a whole thing.
Yeah. So Sikhism, I just got the chills because you're talking about something so important and likely some of the listeners will really resonate. Yogi Bhajan got the download that he needed to bring his practices to the West. It sounds like your parents were, and I love Kundalini yoga. Like I find it to be quite profound practice. It has come out that Yogi Bhajan is a rapist, was horrible to women. A lot of people are denouncing him as the guru. However, the practices are quite potent. So if I do teach them in my spiritual courses, I typically I'll reference him, but I won't necessarily quote him. I used to quote him quite regularly, and now I don't.
Yeah.
And wow, that's amazing that your parents were in that lineage and then chose to shift out. I do think there's a couple when you cover your head, because that's very sacred in Judaism as well, to keep the spiritual enlightenment within. Like we also want to have this modesty in front of God as we understand it, to cover our head and keep that wisdom within. It also like keeps the body warm. So there's a more intimate, there's different intimacy with that spiritual practice, with that spiritual wisdom. But that's so fascinating. What are your parents doing now?
My
Do they still
dad became
practice?
my dad became a Hollywood producer.
Amazing.
And my mom became a healer. You know, she continued on with Reiki and psychic and clairvoyance and started a school and all of this. So the other thing that's fascinating is your soul, I believe, because I'm into Akashic record reading and I teach that. Like, I believe that your soul, Erin, probably had very interesting lifetimes to then come into this life and go into so many different ashrams and be this spiritual teacher that you now are. And the way that you bridge psychology and science and spirituality and religion and mysticism, like I feel like you're all encompassing, aren't you?
I like to say that I educate on Eastern ritual and Western psychology so you can find what resonates and leave what doesn't. I do source from my own life experiences. I had Cheryl Strayed on my podcast, and she said, nothing is more fascinating than the truth. So when you live a life that, like when you're alive and you're living life and you're going out into the world, you're going to collect some stories along the way that remind you that miracles exist every single day, that magic is real, that the medicine truly is being with thyself and worshiping at your own feet and having this intimacy with thyself. So I like to hang out there. I don't think of myself as this, and I think that's why that's why you and I have connected. I am not on a pedestal. That's not interesting to me. I want to be doing the work with everybody. I want to have these intimate conversations. The pedestal, like everybody is the same. We put people on these like great stages and we have these grandiose ideas. And it's so true. I don't know if you've ever met your heroes, but when you meet your heroes and you realize they also have anxiety, they also have deep fears, they also use the restroom first thing in the morning. It's so humbling, it's so human, it's so normal. So yes, you can source from your mentors and you can collect the wisdom that resonates with you. I know you and I met at Kathy Heller's It's Her Turn Summit, and there were such incredible speakers, and I'm just in awe of the people participating and the people that are speaking and absorbing what resonates with me. And here's the thing, what resonates with you is going to be different for every single person.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and then build a roadmap from there, or decide who you are at your core from there. But you're allowed to digest the material of other people and then decide, what is the highest possible timeline for you. And I define the highest possible timeline as your most nourished, joyful, and authentic life.
I love that so much because I've been in the process of de-pedestaling these mentors.
Yeah.
And really, when I interviewed Kate Northrup, she said, yeah, just it's isolating. I asked her about the pedestaling, and she was like, it's really isolating. It makes me feel lonely. And then there's so far to fall when people realize that you're human. And so I love that you're saying worship at your own feet because this is the era I feel that we're stepping into, really, is taking down these gurus from these pedestals, thinking that they're superhuman. I remember I was talking to a breathwork facilitator of mine at the end of a psychedelic mushroom sacred journey, and I was kind of having a little bit of a moment about human design. My husband and me both have our open roots, and what does this mean? And how are we gonna da da da? And he's like, look, unless if someone is like floating and shooting rainbows out their ass, like take it with a grain of salt. And
Yeah.
I love that response because I was like, now trying to, people ask me about human design because I do human design readings, and I'll say, like, you know what? It's all just a way, a road, like you're saying. It's all just a road back to our own highest authority, being our own highest authority. What do you feel like? Did you always believe that you are your own highest authority, or was this part of coming out of the kind of cultish environments that
Well,
you realized that?
think about our current culture, right? So in America, who has the highest authority? Maybe a doctor or a lawyer, right? In your family systems, who has the highest authority? Probably the grandfather or the father of the group, even if it's like I always say, we do whatever my mom wants, my dad's way. So it's kind of like this combination of mom and dad, like who's the authority of that group. So we have these systems in our culture that exist no matter what, and then we have a hierarchy. So think about when you go to school and you're in fifth grade and you ask the teacher a question and the teacher says no, or like that's a stupid question. The teacher is the authority. You are going to internalize that message. The teacher is the guru, right? What is a guru? A guru is a teacher in that moment. So I think it's so essential. All cultures had a hierarchy. It's typically at the top, it was the medicine woman, it was the priest, it was the rabbi, it was the shaman or the imam of nature. And that authority will always exist in some way. However, we do have it a little bit backwards right now, I think. We live during a time where we're not encouraging spirituality in the school system. There's some interesting theologies coming out of this, but to have a strong spiritual core means that you are likely experiencing the strength of love of learning and the strength of curiosity. So you are likely asking bigger life questions. And when you have the opportunity to share stories and ask bigger life questions, you're going to think in a little bit of a different way. And then the hope is when you ask somebody for wisdom. So this is what I do with my clients, right? It depends on which program it is. I'm best known for the Aligned Coaching Certification, which is a 9-month program where you become a certified meditation teacher and spiritual psychology coach. There's a proper curriculum, right? So I will educate on that curriculum. And for example, in class yesterday, somebody came and said, she asked me a question about an experience she was moving through in her life. And I sourced from the curriculum. So based on term 2, when we look at the chakra system and its marriage to Western psychology, this is some wisdom that you could source from it. And then I'll add another layer. What I have done in my life in that same situation, this is the action steps I took. What do you think? What feels authentic for you? What are you resonating with of these stories? So I think it's so important to, if you are in a place of leadership, if you are a mentor, coach, guide, midwife of the soul, you can always share your knowledge based on what has worked for you and your past clients. I'll source from thousands of my past students and clients. And always, you have the responsibility to throw the question back because people need to learn to think for themselves. That's why I always say, and this is my 3rd time saying it, but worship at your own feet, source from self, do the needed work to know who you are at your core.
And this is not what we're taught in our education system, is how to think for ourselves. We're taught how to regurgitate. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So was there a time, did you always just have this original thinking, Erin? I mean, was there a time where you kind of had this awakening of that you're your highest authority?
Yeah, I was, and this is chapter 2, and nothing can stop you. I'm not sure when this episode comes out, but the book is aggressively on sale right now because of
Oh
Black
yeah, I'm
Friday.
gonna put it out like today.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Oh, good. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's on sale right now. I think because of Black Friday, like every book is super on sale on Amazon. So if you buy 22 copies, you get a one-on-one session with me. I don't offer that often,
Ooh.
so if that resonates. I think that's a really fun one because then you can just buy the book for your spiritual running buddies, if you like your yogi friends, if you have a book group, but also for your friends and family that are interested in self-development or the spiritual path or Eastern ritual and Western psychology. So yeah, if you buy 22 books, just email my team and we'll schedule a one-on-one. To answer your question, I was living in, it was Diwali. So I was living in India. I was serving in the slums of Mumbai,
Wow.
and it was amazing. And also, I needed a reason to get to India. And that was something, and I say this very humbly, it's so hard. I was 23, 24. I said to my parents, I'm moving to India. That's not acceptable, right? And even now, as a mother, if my daughter said to me, I am moving to India, that is, I would be so nervous,
Hmm.
especially because I was very safe, and I always recommend people to solo female travels, to solo travel. But I needed to give my parents a reason as to why I was going to India. And I found this amazing organization, and I essentially worked in the slums of Mumbai for 2 months. And it was a great way to integrate myself in Indian culture. So I share that because you can have a deep desire and dream, and also can you make it digestible so that you feel safe, but also the people that love you also feel safe. Because I don't want to cause harm to the people around me based on my life decisions. So I was working in the slums of Mumbai with this incredible nonprofit, and we got 2 weeks off for Diwali, which is typically the same time as Hanukkah and Christmas, and
Hmm.
it is a festival of lights, so it's quite similar to Hanukkah. And
Hmm.
I went to Rishikesh, which is in northern India, and I booked a stay at this Ayurvedic ashram. I was very into Ayurveda at the time. I had cystic acne, just like very human things that I wanted to heal.
Hmm.
And at this Ayurvedic ashram, I was so, I like get there, I check in, I go into detail in the book, but I fill out a questionnaire about everything I'm moving through. I was feeling lonely. I had a little bit of anxiety. I was living on the other side of the world. I thought a lot of my problems would be solved by living on the other side of the world. I had cystic acne, like all these things that I wanted to heal in my life. And I was so devoted to God. Like I was so devoted to doing anything. I was so open. And the guru of the ashram recognized that. And essentially, a couple of days said to me, I will help you heal these deep things by having sex with me.
Hmm.
And now that I lived through, and I packed up, left immediately, knew that I needed to leave immediately, and a lot of miracles started occurring from there. I know you read the book, but I essentially ran from the ashram as the sun was setting. And I saw these people, legitimately, they were glowing. And I went to a cafe with them, and one of them said to me, Erin, there's a man staring at you. And I was so freaked out. And I turned around, and it ended up being this man that I knew 6 months earlier when I was living in Jerusalem in Israel. And he would make by morning juice for me, and we would like connect. And it's just so wild how you could be on the other side of the world, yet run into a familiar face, that you can always ask for help and receive the exact thing that you needed in that moment. Since I experienced this, I've met so many women that have been in the exact same situation where they were
Hmm.
looking to heal something. They found a manipulative guru. And we know this in all of our Yogi Bhajan, Osho, Bikram. Like
Yeah.
you could watch
Yeah.
Wild Wild Country on Netflix. Like
Yep.
there are so many gurus that are falling for their pedestals. In that moment, however, the mask was lifted. It was like maybe he could have taught me a little bit about the doshas of Ayurveda. Maybe there was some amazing stretch and a hatha yoga sequence that I wouldn't have otherwise found. I can always walk myself back home. I can always take care of myself. I trust that if I'm in a bad situation, I can leave it, and I
Yeah.
will be guided into safety. I'll be guided into comfort. So that was a huge radical awakening for me.
Yeah.
And I still
I
lean on that.
I relate, and also I was just in circle with some women at the Mountain Village Airbnb retreat that I have, and very similar experiences to what you just shared. It's so, so, so common. And it's not just in the spiritual world, it's in the world. It could be in a corporate office, right? So it's just pervasive. And I think all women, if in that audience we had asked, raise your hand if you've had a Me Too moment, we'd all probably raise our hand. It's very unfortunate. Yeah.
Yes, and now what? So I also believe, and this is a really hard one for people to swallow, and I get it, we, on some level, agree to certain aspects of the drama in our life.
I agree.
I'm not saying we're calling in these horrible tragedies and extreme traumas. I've been through it. I'm sure you've been through it. I think by the age of 30, most people have been through pretty extreme, devastating experiences in their life. I think our trauma makes us unique and colorful. Otherwise, you would have lack of perspective and be like very bland. So your trauma gives you
Yeah, like no
personality.
empathy or compassion or dynamicism.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And now what? So this thing happened to you. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to go deep on this healing journey? Are you going to support others in healing because you figured some steps out? And that's a lot of my story as well. I was a very anxious person. I found active meditation and prayer, and it really deeply healed me. Travel, connecting to myself, really deeply healed me. So I share from that place.
I love that you share about your anxiety, and I'd love to hear more about that because I struggle with that as well.
Yeah.
Like how that occurred for you, how you started to notice this was like a problem, and how you deal with it now. Is it still something that pops up for you?
Thanks for asking that. Motherhood like hit me like a truck. I think motherhood is the craziest
Whew,
initiation in the world. It is the hardest
for
thing I've
sure.
ever done.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Um,
I hear
I
you.
do have to say a big contributing factor. I was super anxious in college. I was on the birth control pill. I was drinking 5 nights a week. I was eating horrible food, just like food that was on the meal plan. And none
Hmm.
of that is unique. That's typically the human experience of an American in college. So I
Sure.
really aggressively question that. I don't like that. I don't think that's good. It's creating good like patrons. It's not creating innovative thinkers. I could go on a tangent on that for a long time, but during that time, I did find Kundalini yoga, and I did find Paulo Coelho and Gabby Bernstein and Louise Hay and Dr. Wayne Dyer, and
Mhm.
became a devout student of yoga, really devote to yoga. And I promised myself I would move to Israel and then India, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. And I will say, and my husband John, he looked at me like 2 days ago and he said, Erin, you've made really good life decisions. And it was like the nicest thing
Wow.
that
That's
that
so
I've
sweet.
yeah, because it was so sweet and it meant so much to me. And I was up with Eden a lot last night and I was reminiscing on that moment because I think that's one of the nicest compliments you could say to somebody that you know
Yeah.
intimately is that you make good life decisions. I worked in corporate America for a very brief period of time and I just saw that repetitive cycle of, wow, people, we have this deep inner desire and it takes a lot of gusto to act on it. And it's so easy to be comfortable in a job that's typically fine, or a 5 p.m. glass of wine that's really comforting, or
Mm.
finding other hobbies and practices that feel really nourishing in the moment. And maybe it isn't what I would call your highest possible timeline, but it's the timeline that's right for you this season of your life. And I just had this really radical knowing through my meditation practices, through my commitment to God, which I'm still deeply, deeply devoted to, that I had to show up for myself. I have to show up for myself in a way that was so radical. And that is kind of what propelled me to book those plane tickets and live on the other side of the world. As a new mom, a lot of anxiety really did come back. I don't like calling it postpartum depression and anxiety. I just think it's the rite of passage. I think these diagnoses sometimes dumb down our current human experience. Hardest thing I've ever done, and so humbling. And I can now very proudly say that, like, Baruch Hashem, thank God, this is the happiest time of my life because I walked through it and I really surrendered. So even when I was messaging you that I was going to be a couple minutes late to this call because I was nursing my daughter to sleep,
Yeah.
that's a surrender. I can't do the crying. I can't even figure it out. Like I have all my
Yeah.
friends that they have the nannies and their kids are in daycare, and they like I went to yoga for the first time in a very, very long time yesterday, and I cried the whole entire class because my
Yeah.
body remembers. My
Yeah.
body remembers the devotion.
Yeah.
But I surrendered so deeply because there was no other way. The anxiety was just this manipulation of time. You can't manipulate time. If your daughter needs you to
Yeah.
fall asleep and needs the boob to fall asleep, who am I to say that this work call is more important than that? It's not, right? No one else can raise my kid the way that I want to raise her, or love her the way that I know I can love her, or feed her from the breast like I know I can feed her from the breast.
Yeah.
This all comes back into something that I've been meditating on, and it's how do we nurse ourselves back to health? Because my daughter will
Mm.
just come to the boob and she's nursed back into alignment or lulled into sleep. And we live in a time where we are nursing ourselves with social media scrolling, with a glass of
Yes.
wine, with binge eating food that doesn't feel of highest alignment for the body, of watching a ton of TV. And I like watching TV. It just depends on your consumption of it.
Yeah, it's like how intentional are you about what you're doing and the amount of time you're doing it?
And how can you nurse yourself in a healthier way, right? How can
Mm.
you bring yourself back to the breast in a metaphorical way?
Wow,
Walking
I
in
love
nature.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
I
good. I'm glad
love
it
that.
resonates. Reading, I read Harry, I'm rereading Harry Potter. I'm about to finish the sixth book. It's so healing. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. A
So
girlfriend of mine
fun.
has to listen to Harry Potter to put herself to sleep every night.
I love
Yeah.
it.
That's great. Erin, thank you for your honesty, your authenticity, your vulnerability. I'm in tears here because I just remember, I do remember, and it's such a precious time, and it's the hardest time, and it's the most beneficial time, and it's the time that graduates you and grows you into rebirthing into this new goddess of motherhood, and just, it's so unique to each woman, but we all understand it on some level. And
Yeah.
I remember missing meetings, I remember missing calls, I remember feeling so isolated. I mean, you're lucky, like you have so many things you're doing and you're serving in so many ways. So you really have that connection where you keep getting to be on your purpose, on your purpose, on your purpose. But I know women get so lost and we have to find ourselves back to who am I now? Who am
Hmm.
I now as a mother? But who am I now as a woman after becoming a mother? It's like this whole new discovery.
We are supposed to lose ourselves in motherhood. That's the biggest obstacle I hear from women. I don't want to lose myself. Even I was so over identified with being an entrepreneur, a nomad, an author, like so in the scene. We spent the last couple of years living in Austin, like going to all of these events and traveling the world. And we're back to traveling the world, which is so fun. But that is so silly when I think about my role as a mama and how holy it is to be a matriarch. And then you have to come back into the questioning, which seems to be the theme of this conversation. How does society benefit by separating mother from child? Why, in most institutions, is it, if you're lucky, 12 weeks for paid maternity leave and then you can take disability? Why is it called disability? It shouldn't even be
Mm.
called that. It's the most greatest gift in the whole entire world. It's the most wonderful initiation that could ever occur. How does the world benefit by separating mama from baby?
Yeah.
So I think about that a lot as well.
What are
The
the adults that we're creating that really need their mother's boob? You can see they're the ones who are creating war. It's like, oh my gosh, if you had just been nursed a little longer, maybe you wouldn't be so angry or so disconnected from yourself.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I know nursing is an obstacle for so many people, and I
it
do also just
is.
generally mean it metaphorically. And I know sleep training is such a controversial topic, and I so get it. I was super unwell and really needed sleep, and we let Eden fuss at around 7 months for a little bit, and it did lead to more stretches. And now we're back to the second she makes a sound, she's back on the boob. But there's a season for everything, and that's not to say that I might shift it and let her fuss again at some point. The thing that everybody needs to meditate on is, and I think I did this so often in motherhood. I followed all of the accounts on social media. I asked all the women in my life, how did you get your baby to sleep? What swaddle are you using? What sleep sack are you using? What bottle and breast pump? And what organic
Mhm.
clothing brand do you like the most? And did you see that this one has a double zipper and it's on sale right now? Like all the et ceteras that we dive into. And then once my nervous system finally relaxed, which honestly took about 6 or 7 months, I could then ask myself, what kind of mother do I want to be? What kind of mama do I want to be? And that's a mama that Eden dips into the ocean 3 times a day when we're living in Costa Rica.
Mm,
Eden eats
love that.
food. Yeah, she nurses on demand, or she gets liver and bone marrow, or she, is going to be fed in a quite different way. My John is already teaching her how to read on these big poster boards. So it's walking yourself back home. I do think it does require a relaxed nervous system. This does mean knowing how to nurse yourself in a proper way. Go for a walk in nature, listen to a stimulating podcast, read a fantasy novel, get yourself into relationships. I know you and I were talking about Italy, which would be so fun if you'll
Hmm.
join us in
Yep.
Italy.
I want
But
to
book the
touch on
trip.
that.
Yeah, book the trip, sign up for the program. I do think so many of us are understimulated, and I said this at Kathy Heller's event. So many of us are just moving through life on autopilot, and that's not bad. Like, we have our beautiful meals that we're eating, we have our loving romantic relationships,
Yeah,
and
ritual is great.
it's great. And also, there's this little bit of understimulation, and we might not necessarily call it a midlife crisis or quarter life crisis or anxiety,
Like a
depression.
malaise, yeah.
Yeah, it's as if like we're just living life a little gray, if you will, like the
Mm.
light is on a dim setting. That understimulation is typically a symptom that you are not living aligned to your strengths, and that you typically need to start learning or getting curious about something that is going to rev your engine back up, that is going to bring your, in Judaism, we call it your neshama, so like your inner light, but it's so much more, it's as if it's like your soul, it's like feeding your soul. So it's the light of your soul and feeding that in a way where you are living what I would call a stimulating life.
Yeah, like if you're walking around every single day in all seasons, just exhausted, tired, it's not necessarily that you're not doing the right things. It's that maybe your soul isn't lit up from the inside. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so living and learning across so many cultures was so transformative, and we touched upon some of the things that you've learned. You created UpLevel Meditation to help people reframe anxiety, depression, negative thoughts. So what's the most like unexpected way that that framework has impacted your life, Erin?
Up level meditation, it's my own specific formula for active meditation. I think it's nice to maybe also learn these practices from a woman that's going to encourage you to always resource from self. This specific lineage, you open up your shoulders, you open up your hips, you increase your breath work, you open up your body in such a way where you're going to feel different types of emotions and feelings. Your body always holds on to stuck emotions. For women, it's typically the hips. For men, it's typically the shoulders. However, if you are operating in your masculine or feminine, that's going to be a little bit opposite. There are 8 billion people in this world. There's 8 billion different ways to connect to a loved one, to eat for optimum health. There's 8 billion different ways to meditate. So often we think of meditation as a silent and seated practice. Silent seated practice can be really wonderful when you are in turbulence on an airplane. Silent seated meditation practice can be so wonderful when you are sitting on the beach listening to the waves. And in a life where you need to just drop into your body in a quick way to become quite clear or to manifest or to make a big decision, we do need to increase our heart rate a little bit. We do need to oxygenize the body. So we could think about this from a scientific perspective. When you provide abundant oxygen to the body, you are relaxing the amygdala. So the almond shape in the back center of the brain, this is responsible for the flight, fright, or freeze. You are telling yourself that you are safe. And when you tell yourself you are safe, you're releasing the state of panic, and you are going to make different decisions, and you are going to take different actions. That alone can lead to a radically different day. I do think it's also important to remind yourself that, magic is real, that you're always being guided, that you're always supported, because that is also going to align to different decisions in a different type of day. I educate in the book on how essential it is to have a morning with meaning. It is a non-negotiable amount of time where you are showing up for yourself as if you're like taking a stance. Like, this is my life. I am an active participant in my own life. I'm going to go out of my way to ensure that I am living in highest alignment, but also taking actions on my deepest desires and dreams. And give yourself time with your body and your breath and have that intimacy with self. It's a life-changing practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like,
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah, it's a, you see on the days when you don't do that, that sliding door kind of comparison of, wow, my day went this way versus on the days when you do dedicate yourself and you're in your rhythm and you get into flow and you get into alignment, and you've meditated and you're like, oh my gosh, that was a magical day. So you really can notice it with your own experimentation. Thank you for that. And thank you for the science of that. So your work encourages people, Erin, to live an unedited life. That's a great word. So what does unedited mean to you? When did you feel like you truly embraced this unedited version?
I'm still working on it, and that's the most truthful answer, because I mean,
Yeah.
think about, oh my God. We're having this conversation right now. I'm in Chicago. I'm in my parents' house,
Okay.
and I get along very well. I'm very close with my parents. I'm extremely close with my mom,
I
and
like how you say my mom. Like
my
it's
mom. I'm
Chicago.
Chicago. My
Yeah. My
mom.
sister's in Chicago. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, my mom. And it's so wonderful to have relationships in your life where you don't need to edit yourself. Like, I do not need to edit myself with my husband, with my mom, with my dad. And I do think we live during a time where we walk on eggshells with a lot of people, whether it's differences politically, whether I could talk about spirituality and that just won't resonate with somebody, whether I could talk about eating whole, real foods and that will feel triggering for somebody else. And this is like, when it comes to authenticity and belonging, we are most likely always going to choose belonging because we need to survive, and you must do the needed work to find like-minded people where you can be your most authentic self. It is, I say this quite gently, like, if you are continuously over editing yourself for the closest, most intimate relationships in your life, then you need to shift. It doesn't mean that when I talk to my friend who I know voted opposite for me, that I'm going to immediately bring up politics. It's
Yeah.
not honestly the most interesting conversation to me. That isn't even authentically where I would start the conversation anyways. But if that is what an authentic way for somebody to start a conversation, then it's good to find people that are like-minded. It is good to have people in your life that do think opposite you. You don't want to be an echo chamber. I remember just like, now that we're talking politics, just like shock of different elections and being like, oh my God, I can't believe this even happened. That typically means that there needs to be a conversation within yourself of having people with diversifying beliefs all around you.
I was in Chicago the last time Trump got elected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild world we live in. And
The-
when we're constantly editing ourselves, it's as if we are telling ourselves it's not safe for you to be your fullest expression of self. So do the needed work to find like-minded people where you can be your fullest expression of self. And
and
at
it's the
least
best, isn't
it's
it?
the best. And at the end of the day, be your fullest self with yourself. So don't edit yourself in your own company. And I would go one step further and say, with the person that you chose to bring children into the world with, your life partner, your husband, wife, I hope you can have the most unedited relationship with them as well.
Yeah, it starts with us. It starts with,
Absolutely.
like you said, being at your own feet and knowing yourself. And we can only really show others and be loved by others to the extent that we've come home to ourselves. That's beautiful. I think that's a really important work, what you said there at the end about not editing yourself with yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like, how much are we denying of our own truth? I think journaling helps us get there. What else helps you get there to your most unedited self within you?
There's a lot of, I love that you brought up journaling because there's a lot of different writing practices that will resonate with different people. I have a whole chapter of this on my book. There's another wonderful practice called fear inventory because sometimes people need to focus on the fear for just a little bit so they could kind of surpass, like they could get over themselves. And I want to talk about,
Mm.
people might call this tough love. And I've had
Okay.
some, I'm not necessarily the tough love mentor in the space, but I'm a very honest person. And I do think there are some spiritual practices, traumas, obstacles where you just got to get over yourself. So,
Mm.
Freudian model encourage you to relive the trauma over and over and over again. What does that do? It encourages the brain to keep these neural pathways very clear. So you're remembering that trauma over and over and over again. So if you are somebody who's listening to this, who has moved through very deep trauma, I hear you, I hold you, I have as well. For some people, it will resonate to relive it and speak about it with a mental health professional or coach or mentor. And also, I do wholly believe in the spiritual practice of just getting over yourself and moving on. It is not always healthy to relive the experience and re-trigger yourself over and over again. We do that to protect ourselves, right? So we do
Thinking
that
that
to,
thinking that it won't happen again if we keep reliving it somehow will protect. Yeah, got it.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I'm here with you. I'm debating, so I could share. I don't, I'll share some of my experiences, but for me, something that I moved through on at my 4th of July parade in the suburbs of Chicago, there was a mass shooting a couple
mm,
of years ago. And we were, when I say right there,
mhm.
it was an act of God that we were not in the line of fire. The most devastating time, it was an act of anti-Semitism. So traumatizing, horrifying. And the way that I coped with it is I would protect myself by every time I walked into a room, I would look for every exit and I would look to see
Yeah,
who's walking in carrying a backpack,
yeah,
like little
yeah.
things like that, that actually they're neuroses. They make you crazy. They
Mhm.
make you actually
It's
unwell.
that hypervigilance
That
that's
hypervigilance. It's
trying to
so
protect you from dying, of course.
So my way that I healed that is I cannot keep reliving this experience over and over again. It's not
Yeah,
going to protect me. It's not
yeah,
serving me, and it's
yeah,
really wreaking havoc on my nervous system.
yeah.
So I share from an experience that if I went to a guide, to a therapist, to relive that over and over again, that would not have served me. And at some point, you have to just trust that you will never, ever, ever be in a situation, Baruch Hashem, like that ever, ever, ever again. So
You're like,
that's
I
just
learned
one.
that lesson. I am good. You tell the universe, I learned
Yeah,
it.
I
Whatever that
learned it.
was for me, whatever the karma
Oh my
was,
God,
got
I
it.
learned it. I never need to learn
Got
it
it.
again. I got it. I got it, and I'm moving on. Yeah, so that's a big one.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. I felt head chills when you were sharing it. I felt like I was right there. Okay, Erin, if you could travel back to your 20 something self, I don't know what age you were when that happened, but your 20 something self starting this journey, what advice would you whisper to her knowing what you know now?
This is such an amazing question. Thank you for asking this. I asked this to somebody else the other day as well. So, what I would say to myself is, Erin, you are fucking magic. Trust yourself deeply and completely. You are always being guided.
I love that. Any age stage would benefit from that message.
We all are magic. So, right? That's our agreement. We came into this world. You're worthy because you're here. That's it. There's no comma, semicolon. It's a period. You are worthy because you exist right now in this moment in time. If I believe I am magic, then you also being opposite me are also magic. You
Hmm.
listening and being present with us in this moment in time are also magic. And maybe that just means that if you're listening, you're like, not me, that doesn't resonate. I'm not here for it. Ask very clearly for a miracle. Just do it. Just have
Mm.
some fun. Say, show me a miracle. Define it. Maybe you need to hear a specific song. Maybe you need to see a deer. I always work with deer.
Me too.
It's
When I
my, it's
open
our
the Akashic,
Patronus.
it's always
Yeah. Oh,
deer.
I love that. That's amazing.
Wow.
That's fun. So ask for a miracle.
Yeah, we're literally made of stardust.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So your Align coaching certification empowers people to become meditation teachers and spiritual psychology coaches. We touched upon a little bit. So what's one breakthrough transformation that you've witnessed in someone that really sticks out for you who completed the program, and how did it expand her capacity to feel good?
It's open to men and women. We're in our 8th cohort right now. This is a tried and true model. It's an alternative to getting a master's degree. It is truly life-giving. We start with term 1, which is a full-on meditation teacher training. I'm at the point in my career where you must have some sort of meditation or spiritual practice, a daily devotional, something where you're tapping into yourself or divine as you understand it. And once you go through the meditation teacher training, you're going to absorb the rest of the content in a different way. Again, making different life decisions and having different conversations and being made up differently. I've had women build multiple 6-figure businesses. I've had past students book one-way plane tickets and live on the other side of the world. I've had past students start podcasts, write books, build beautiful businesses, manifest their highest possible soulmate, relax their nervous system, heal some deep wounds within themselves. It's seriously limitless, because once you have the tools to connect to thyself, it becomes infinite. Like you're just trusting your path in a different way. And that's why ACC really exists. I was sharing this work. I was doing one-on-one coaching and group coaching. I was leading retreats around the world. And I just kept thinking to myself, there has to be more educators trained with these specific tools. There has to be more educators in this space. And that's how ACC came to be, because not everybody's going to resonate with me. I'm not going to force you to. I'm not going to, that's not, I don't desire that, right? If you're in my world, it's because we're typically soulmates for each other on some level. So if people have these tools on UpLevel Meditation and spiritual psychology frameworks, and I take my clinical masters, my clinical psychology degree from Columbia University, the transformational frameworks that I used in my coaching business, and I put them into very digestible coaching frameworks, and everyone is trained in them, and they weave it into their coaching businesses. They're leading retreats, they're speaking on stages, they're offering corporate wellness, they're doing one-on-one and group coaching. It's very transfer.
You look so young, but you have so much that you've accomplished for so many people. It's incredible. Have you always been told that you look younger than your wisdom?
I'm 33. At that event where you and I met, people kept
Yeah.
saying that to me, and I haven't gotten that in a long time, but it's more of a commentary of, I think people, when they're in my space, they just know. They know I'm a new mom. People that work with me have typically been in my, actually, that's not true. I was going to say I've been in my world for a really long time, because I've been in this, I launched my business in 2016, but I've been sharing on social media. I started as Bullshit Free Babe in 2013. So, yeah, thank you. I mean, I take that in a,
It's a
but like,
compliment,
yeah, what is it though, right? So whatever it is, whatever I need to be for people to get the healing.
right? That's so humble. So Tuscany, tell me all about it.
Are
I
you
want to hear
coming? Are
every,
you going
I
to come
don't
with
know.
us?
I don't know. We'll see. But tell me everything.
I
What can we know about it? Why Tuscany? What do you love about it? When you've been there, what changed you?
Oh my God, Tuscany is where I first fell in love. Like
Ah,
really, like, just I had a really healthy relationship, and my husband is so grateful that I had this like really healthy relationship before I met him. And we met study abroad in Florence, Italy, and Florence is really where my prayer practice just absolutely exploded. I would go to the Duomo. You know, I'm Jewish, I was raised Jewish, but put
yep.
me in any temple and I'll drop in. But also the food, right? I find God in pasta, in pizza, in croissant. And I am a total snob when it comes to food. I have extremely high standards. That's why I bring my people to amazing places around the world.
So you're a connoisseur. Yeah, love
I
it.
mean, yeah, I mean, like if you had, like, we have a dinner party that we're heading to tonight, and I am showing up with the best bottle of wine that I've ever tasted. And it's, if anybody's interested, it's Peony Lane wine. We buy it with Bitcoin. My husband and I are really big Bitcoiners. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, but back to Tuscany retreat. Tell me more
So
about it.
Tuscany is, it's a 6 month group coaching program. We are
Starts in
going to meet,
January.
it starts in January. We are going to meet for 6 months where we are going to dive deep into spiritual practices. We are going to study really wonderful spiritual themes like human design, which I love that you talked about. Maybe I'll even have you come in and educate on that. That could be really fun. German New Medicine and Kabbalah and spiritual themes that when you learn about them, it's just so fun to learn about these diverse spiritual themes. There's also just going to be deep dive coaching with me where we are going to unlock the 2.0 version of self, heal deep wounds within, manifest our deepest desires and dreams. The people signing up for this program, it's a really incredible group of people coming together, and then we meet for 5 days in Tuscany. So this specific retreat center, it is an organic wine vineyard, an organic farm. We will have wine with dinner. Why? Because every sacred religion uses wine in some capacity. So it's a healthy relationship with a divine fermented grape. And in Tuscany, we are going to have 5 incredible days of deep spiritual practice. We're by natural springs. We're going to spend time with our feet in the wine vineyards and the soil. We're going to be eating the most divine farm to table food and doing really deep, profound self-development and spiritual work. So workshops on positive psychology and science of nourishment, deep yogic and meditative practices, heading into Siena. Siena is about 20 minutes away. Montegigero, which is a medieval town, is 8 minutes away. We can just walk there in the middle of the day. But it's this idea of being deeply well fed, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I'm so excited about it. And the reason it actually exists is because when I was early postpartum, I said to John, I need to get back to Italy. I want to drink an espresso in Italy. I want to eat food that makes me weep, that I feel in my womb. I want to have these deep conversations over natural wine about God and our connection to God. And I want to bring people to this land because people, we are starved. We are spiritually starved right now. We are spiritually starved right now. And it's manifesting differently for every single person. And now is the time to be deeply well fed, deeply nourished. And that's what this 6 month container is going to be. I am so, so excited. And yeah. Come hang out. And if
Sounds incredible.
we're offering $500 off if you listen to this
I
episode.
saw that.
So
Ooh.
please, yeah, if you listen to this episode and message me, we do have capacity because it is at a retreat center. So once it fills, and it's really amazing humans are signing up. So definitely connect with me as soon as possible and join us.
I am sure it is going to be absolutely nourishing, life-changing, and beautiful. I have always wanted to go to Italy. I've never been. I've been
Come,
trying to go for years.
this is it.
Yes, you're calling to my soul, and so guys, if you're listening to this and you want to come with me, let me know. We'll see what we can do. Erin, is there anything else in this moment after you've breastfed and you're in this phase that you're in and all the wisdom that you've shared, including like the vulnerable traumas that you've experienced, and then also sharing with us like it's okay to move on. These don't need to define you. You can share them, but they're not something we need to constantly relive. And then walking us through like why it's so important to have these morning practices, to have these experiences, to get these ways of seeping ourselves in wisdom and in bringing ourselves back home to ourselves. Like, is there anything else that you feel like just is really important to you that you want to share that we didn't talk about?
I reserve the right to change my mind. And I share that because you get to decide if you are the maker of your own magic. I was a devout vegan for so long, wouldn't even wear leather. Now I'm basically carnivore. You get to decide what resonates with you. You are invited to change and welcome new versions of yourself. For all of us that are in romantic partnership, you know that you fall in love with different versions of your spouse. So do that with yourself as well. You can change your mind. Give yourself that freedom and that permission.
I love saying I don't have to be who I was yesterday. And I say that in breathwork. I say you don't have to be who you were yesterday. Thank you for that. That's such a
Thank you.
huge, important permission slip because we're always growing and we're always learning. This conversation, I'm a new person now after this conversation. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
I love you. You're amazing. You're so wise. You're so real. You're so talented. I can tell anyone's going to benefit from working with you. I'm so grateful that I was led to you just as a human. The example of how you speak and the example of how you lead, of how you teach, of how you are on stage, of how you are in conversation, that's just as important as what you're saying. So thank you.
That means so much to me. I'm eating it, digesting it, letting it become me. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is so fun.
Oh my God, you're so welcome. This was such a delight. I can't wait to share it with everyone. All right, guys, keep expanding your capacity to feel good one breath at a time. Loving you, and we'll see you soon.